Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we begin the first of a three-part series exploring the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in the sign of Taurus, which is happening in April of 2024. Most astrologers agree that this is the biggest transit of 2024. I'm certainly treating it that way. I think it's right up there. I'm always willing to be wrong or surprised, and maybe there's another transit that will totally take the cake for 2024, but I think that this transit is probably it. And so I thought it would be fun as we are coming to the end of the calendar year here to reflect on this upcoming conjunction between Jupiter and Uranus that will be happening in the spring of the year ahead, kind of set the table for what's to come. We're going to look at this in three different parts. We're going to look at it from a kind of historical perspective. We're going to break down the archetype through storytelling and examples from clients that I've seen over the years. And then we're going to do horoscopes for all 12 signs. So a three-part series that we're going to unpack this week. And then we're going to start in, by the way, later in the week, we're going to be starting in on Pluto into Aquarius, which is, I think, going to be a 4 or 5-part series that I've been developing, all new content. I think you're really going to like that too. So lots of looking forward this week at the year ahead and some of the big transits to come. Anyway, that's our agenda. Before we get into it, don't forget to like and subscribe. Share your comments and reflections as you are anticipating this transit. What's on your mind? We'd love to hear from you. Transcripts of any of my daily talks can always be found on the website, nightlightastrology.com. You guys know we are trying to get to 1,777 backers in our 10th annual Kickstarter campaign, which is happening right now, all the way up until New Year's Eve. We would really appreciate your help. A big thanks to everyone who's already pitched in. You can find the link at the top of the comment section, pinned to the top. You'll find the link in the description of this video. You will find the link. So far, we have 304 backers. We still need 1,473. That's at the time that I'm recording this intro. So if you haven't already and you appreciate this channel, you like the content, please consider supporting us. When you do, pick up 50% off any of my online programs or bundle them together, 2, 3, 4 class passes. We have 6 different programs that we offer online. They're all fantastic. You can get up to 75% off when you push up the bundle to 3 or 4 classes. So I highly recommend doing that. It's the only time of year that we run the sale on all of our programs, and we have a bunch of lectures, readings. My book is on sale. You can get the chapter by chapter release of my book before it comes out in print edition. So an audio version as well is being released chapter by chapter. I'm working on the 3rd chapter right now. First 2 have already been released. Anyway, there's lots of good stuff to pick up. Today, I want to talk about, before we get into our content for the day, I want to talk about what prayer and meditation does for this channel. Now, it's hard to say because I don't know exactly, I can't always quantify exactly what daily prayer or meditation does for the work that I create. But I want you guys to know what goes into this work and why I think it matters. I have had a daily form of practice, spiritual practice, since I started doing this. So I've been doing this now, daily content creation, year-round, 300 plus days a year for many years. Now it's 5 days a week on YouTube. But it has been like that for me for 12 years. I am a creature of habit in so many ways, but for me, the best habits are the ones that support your happiness, your health, your sanity, a little bit more. Not that I'm on it or anything, not that I'm like perfectly aligned or anything, but yeah, it helps. Prayer and meditation. So I've had silence as a practice most recently. I've been hanging out with the Quakers, which has been really cool. So a lot of silence. There's been periods of prayer. There's been periods of mantra meditation. There's been periods of, different kinds of mantra meditation, regular sort of seated meditation. But that has always been a part of how I shape my practices. That has been one of the practices that is part of how I shape my content. So here are the 3 things that I believe that like daily prayer and meditation does for this content. And I want you to know about these things because I think it will help you to value or understand the intentions that go into the content you listen to. And so number 1 is when I sit and get quiet before I write my content for the day, or I take time to be reflective while I'm in the process of creating content, whatever practice that's been over the years, it helps me to empty myself so that something of creative value can come through. Now, I call it creative value. It might be spiritual value. It might be emotional value. It might be comedic value. But so regularly, here's what happens. If I sit down to create content And I haven't done that. And it's not like there have been days where I've been like in a rush and I haven't done it. But I will tell you that almost every single day for 12 years, this has been something that I do. And the main thing that it does is it just takes all the stuff, the thoughts, the emotions, the feelings, the streaming narratives going on in my life, and it just dumps them out. It says, okay, for now, I'm just going to empty all that out. I'll get back to it later. My cup's empty, and it's very relieving. I think that's one of the main benefits of meditation. I have no idea if it's taking me to nirvana or not. I have no clue. But I do know that it empties me out. It empties my head. It empties my thoughts. It empties my feelings. It empties everything. And my heart is just open and my mind is just open. Ideally, it gets relatively more so. You know what I mean? And then something comes through. An idea, a thought, an inspiration, an image that becomes the basis for writing my talk for the day. And I think that is really, really valuable, because for creative content to come through, in a sense, you have to have your hands open as a creator. And I couldn't do it if I didn't have this kind of practice. Number two, it helps me to avoid creating content from my own bias, moods, needs, etc. It's kind of similar to what I just said. But the other truth is that I will often, because I'm a petty human, and I think we all can be that way. I don't think I'm petty. I just think I can be. But it's easy for me to be like, oh, I'm going to shape my content today based on this person and what I wish I could tell them if they were here right now. Do you know what I mean? Or whatever. There's so many ways that my personal drama and my bias and my frustrations and my angst, and honestly, sometimes it's okay to draw from your own experiences in the way you shape content, but not if you're coming at it from a place that's really reactive and you're just clouded. And so doing this helps me to avoid just creating something from a super unconscious space. Not that it doesn't happen. I mean, the unconscious is going to make its way into everything we do. So I'm not saying I'm perfect, but it certainly helps. That's the point. Number three, it helps me to ask for guidance for myself, and it helps me to ask that the content be for the highest good of those who receive it. So you know that when I'm sitting down to do this, what I'm saying is, please help me say something that is valuable. Please guide me so that my ego and my kind of faults and flaws aren't clouding the content. Let it be clear. Let it be useful. Let it be healing. Let it be to the benefit of the people who are listening. That space of meditation allows me to ask for that. And even if the person asking is a hypocrite or imperfect, I believe that the divine appreciates that prayer. Because if you can just get into that space, in a sense, it's like, it doesn't matter if you're a perfect angel 24/7, or if you can be a jerk from time to time. It's the intention that matters. Look, I know I can be an imperfect person, but please, right now, just use me for some good. Asking that, I think, makes a big difference in the content and the way that comes out, which is why I also tell my students to do it before you sit down for a reading with someone, or why I tell my students, if they're going to go have a social media career in astrology, to do it before you make content. I believe it matters. So anyway, if you believe these things matter, then I ask that you consider supporting me and my team in this year's Kickstarter, so you can be a part of the community and what is building and growing these good things. Head on over. The link is at the top of the comment section. It's pinned, or it's in the description of the video. Pick up some classes, or a reading, or my book, or any of the rewards we offer. Help us reach our goal by the new year of 1,777 backers. I hope you guys are having a great day, and that you will really enjoy this video that we're about to watch on Uranus and Jupiter getting together in the spring. All right. Thanks, everyone. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to be looking at Jupiter and Uranus coming together in the sign of Taurus from several different angles in this series, as a way of prepping for what is arguably the biggest transit of the year ahead. I feel like this is a fun thing to do coming to the last month of the year. So yeah, let's take a look at what we can expect. And the first thing to note is, I'm going to put up the real-time clock and show you all the exact day of the conjunction. So here it is. Put it up there. There we go. Here is the real-time clock, and you will see that April 20th of 2024, we have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. Now, you have to remember that the day of the conjunction, it's not always the day of an event. but right around it. The day of the exact conjunction will sometimes flash, but often it's the weeks preceding and following that really big significant events happen that are often set in motion or inspired by the conjunction, the orb of the conjunction. I use about a 3-degree orb, which is what ancient astrologers used. So this is the April 20th Jupiter-Uranus conjunct in Taurus transit that most astrologers are talking about as the biggest, if not one of the biggest transits of the year ahead. And it comes into the 3-degree range. If we just back this up a little bit, I think you could put that 3-degree range at, the beginning of April. So there it is, about 3 degrees off on April 3rd. And then on April 20th, it perfects. And then if you give it another 3 degrees of separation, let's just move over here. You give it about 3 more degrees of separation, and that takes us up to, about May 8th. Now, Jupiter's going to continue carrying that influence into the months ahead because this is a massive archetypal event that is also the seeding of a new Jupiter-Uranus cycle. What's interesting is to note how often Jupiter and Uranus come together in the same sign, which is, although Jupiter and Uranus will come together, it doesn't take too long for them to come together because Jupiter goes through one sign a year. So if we fast forward this a little bit, we can see that Jupiter's going to catch Uranus in Cancer in 2038. It's about 15 years, 14 years roughly. So, it's not like they never happen. 14 years is just a little over Jupiter's cycle of 12 years. But and there can be a little variation in that too. But the point is that what doesn't happen very often is for Jupiter to come back together in the sign of Taurus. Like, I'm just going to fast forward around the wheel here, and we'll just do this little exercise, which can be really interesting. So watch, we're just tracking Uranus into the future. And when Uranus comes into the sign of Taurus, there we go, we'll get one more. But as you'll see today in some of the historical examples that I use, there are huge periods of time where the conjunction does not recur. So this is 2107, 2107. That is the next time that the two planets get together in April of that year. That's a long, long time from now. But if you go back in time, what you'll find is that their conjunctions are also, historically speaking, rare in the sign of Taurus. So what I want to do is show you the most recent 3 examples of Jupiter and Uranus conjoining in the sign of Taurus. And what I did was I just picked a few events. There are so many events that happen on the global scale, but I tried to pick some events that are archetypally representative of Jupiter and Uranus, in the sign of Taurus in particular. What's interesting about outer planetary contacts, and I'll just say this right now before we get going, is that the outer planets, this is something that I've observed, but it's also one of the reasons that you will find that archetypal astrologers don't always pay a lot of attention to the signs as much as they do the combinations of outer planets, Richard Tarnas being the famous example. And that's because when it comes to the outer planets, it's as though they're beyond the parameters of signs and dignities. Okay, so it's almost like they don't participate in the board game of ancient or traditional astrology, in that they're not really sign rulers. And people sometimes say that they are, but most of the people who came up with sign rulerships for the outer planets had never studied and had no idea how the ancient system of dignities actually worked. So without understanding that, it doesn't really make sense to try to assign them rulerships. That's a whole different conversation, but one that's, kind of a big one it's a big conversation in the world of astrology for the past couple of decades, as we've rediscovered most of our ancient texts, which, by the way, is what makes it so much fun to study ancient astrology, because it's just mind-blowing that we have all this information now in the last couple decades. So anyway, What you'll find is that with Jupiter and Uranus, sometimes it's as though pieces of the sign will show up. And other times it's just archetypally Jupiter and Uranus, no matter what sign it's in. And that's pretty consistent when you look at different Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions throughout many different signs. So these examples, some of them that I'm going to share with you are just sort of Jupiter-Uranus moments. But I did pick the ones where Jupiter and Uranus was in Taurus for further reflection and maybe to offer some comments on how the sign of Taurus, an earthy Venusian, the sign of where the moon is exalted and so forth, come into play. But anyway, so just a little disclaimer before we get into it. So, all right, let's look at some Jupiter-Uranus historical examples. And these are going to be the three most recent examples of Jupiter being in the sign of Taurus. Now, part 2 of this series will be looking at the archetype of Jupiter-Uranus when it comes to the personal nativity, meaning how does the transit of Jupiter and Uranus, the conjunction, play out in our individual lives? What we're doing right now is to look at some collective events as a way of magnifying the archetypal combination. It's a little different when you look at things collectively versus personally. And as you guys know, the focus of my channel tends to be on the personal side of things. But it can be useful once in a while to point out historical examples that nicely represent the archetypal qualities of major planetary transits or ingresses. For example, we'll do the same thing with Pluto into Aquarius again. We'll be previewing that as well this month. Okay, so let's go back in time. And what I want you to see is, like, here's Jupiter going around about one sign per year. And we need to take this back in time to the most recent conjunction of Jupiter and Uranus in the sign of Taurus. So to do that, we need to take, and Uranus goes around the zodiac in about 84 years. So here is the last time that they got together. We're going to see them in Taurus, and the two come together. Here's Jupiter conjoining Uranus in the early part of May 1941. So again, these are cherry-picked examples that that serve the purpose of they're sort of like excellent examples of Jupiter-Uranus. There's a lot of things going on, and I'm not here to do any kind of full historical or mundane analysis, right? This is just help you see the archetype in the historical events that was happening the last time these two planets got together. 1941. This is really, I think this is just super fascinating. So the British recovered, I believe it was in a German submarine, but they recovered the Enigma machine, which was a machine that the Germans were using in World War II to encrypt coded messages. And I believe they were coordinating, the messages coordinated attacks between land and air or something like that, or the sea and air. Anyway, it was a huge, and there was a movie, I think, that was made. I want to say Benedict Cumberbatch was in it, but maybe I'm getting the wrong one. And it was about the breaking of that code. Well, the Enigma machine was recovered at this time, and then subsequently the code was broken. And that was a major breakthrough and turning point of sorts in World War II. The reason that this serves as a fantastic example of the Jupiter-Uranus dynamic is that it coincides. There's a couple of things that are here in this event. One is a major breakthrough, a major turning point. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, I mean, I just think a lot in terms of some of my favorite movies like The Lord of the Rings, one of my favorite series. In the Two Towers, there's this big battle going on, and it really looks like the allies of Middle-earth hemmed up in this fortress called Helm's Deep. It looks like they're about to lose the battle. And then as the dawn breaks, Gandalf shows up with a big army, and he comes roaring down the hillside with all of these horses and the dawn is coming up. That couldn't be a more Jupiter-Uranus-like moment where the tide turns and there's something redeeming, but it's like, a really dark and stormy, kind of dark night of the soul, and then the clouds split and light just pours through. That is archetypally similar to Jupiter-Uranus. Jupiter-Uranus represents these turning points in our life story that serve as these breakthroughs of hope, light, progress, and they come unexpectedly. It's like a stroke of grace, some kind of discovery or turning point that really literally turns the tides in some larger and more complicated series of events. So these are like major redemptive turning points, and I think this is a great historical example. However, also the idea of cultural, artistic, imaginative, political, technological progress and breakthroughs are highly characteristic of Jupiter and Uranus. The other thing that happened around this time in 1941 was the classic film Citizen Kane premiered in May of that year in New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles in the month of May. And it was, of course, written by Orson Welles, and he starred in the title role. And I thought this was interesting. I looked up some facts about Citizen Kane, like what makes this film unique. It was his first feature film, and he was given mostly free rein to create the film as he wished, which was unheard of at the time. So here's an example of an iconic movie in the history of the art forms, like cinema and major motion pictures. And it's this major breakthrough in imagination, in art, and in culture, which is very, very common for Jupiter-Uranus conjunctions. You see this repeatedly under such conjunctions. Now, the story is about a fictional newspaper magnate, Charles Foster Kane. And I guess it was widely believed to be based on real-life magnate William Randolph Hearst. Anyway, it was filmed in a style that was completely different, and it featured a lot of flashbacks, if you've ever seen it before. And basically the storytelling technique was revolutionary and really changed the trajectory of cinema. And there was also like this initial rejection of it because it was so different, but it went on to be nominated for 9 Academy Awards. And it's still considered to be one of the most breakthrough, important turning points in at least like American cinema that's ever happened. Here's Jupiter-Uranus in a Venus-ruled sign. And that's the example where there's something about the sign of Taurus and its dignity that is clearly present in one of the events of that conjunction. So again, what is characteristic about this, you have something like the Enigma machine, which is this turning point in a war. And it's a breakthrough, and there's something difficult to decipher that's suddenly being understood. So the theme of sudden understanding, of complete and total comprehension that comes quickly or suddenly, a flash of light, an epiphany, a breakthrough, as well as cultural, artistic innovation and breakthroughs. Very significant. Let's go back in time because there's another example that we can look at, and I want to keep this moving along. I don't want to labor these points too much here. So let's go back, and you're going to notice we got to get Uranus back into Taurus again, and it's not going to happen until 1858. Here it is in May of 1858. You can see Jupiter and Uranus coming together again. Now, there's a variety of things that happen, but I just want to focus on one. It was, you'll see, first of all, I want to show you, this one's a little tricky because the conjunction comes in, oops, here we go. Let's move this forward just a little bit. So the conjunction comes in late May, and literally just like a couple of weeks later, Abraham Lincoln, who's not yet the president, makes a famous speech called his House Divided speech. I want to read you the first lines of this speech. A house divided against itself cannot stand. That's a quote from the Bible, of course. I believe this government cannot endure permanently half slave and half free. I do not expect the union to be dissolved. I do not expect the house to fall, but I do expect it will cease to be divided. It will become all one thing or all the other. Either the opponents of slavery will arrest the further spread of it and place it where the public mind shall rest in the belief that it is in the course of ultimate extinction, or its advocates will push it forward till it shall become lawful in all the states, old as well as new, north as well as south. This was considered a prophetic speech on the part of Abraham Lincoln, who would go on to accept the nomination for the presidency. And of course, the rest is history, as they say. What I find so unique about this event, which comes literally just a couple of weeks after the conjunction, is that it represents one of the other classic Jupiter-Uranus themes, which is political, social, religious, moral progress and breakthroughs. We get a little bit, we become more broad-minded, more accepting. That Jupiter is one of those planets that invites us to broaden our mind and to broaden our hearts and to become more all-inclusive. And the word that Jupiter loves is the word unity. And here Uranus, the kind of outer planet that is Promethean and revolutionary, is making this sort of prophetic announcement that we're either going to be unified and we're going to abolish slavery, or we're going to go all in the opposite direction. And this is a kind of flashpoint for our moral and spiritual compass as a young country. I am not someone who believes that, I don't look at historical events in a black or white way, because, history is complicated. And, I'm not someone who believes that the history of our country is, rosy, right? But this is a really important moment of progress for this country. And it's marked by Jupiter-Uranus's conjunction in Taurus just a few weeks earlier. I find that to be inspiring, because maybe some moments of progress are coming. But what I do know is, on the personal level, progress is one of the promises that Jupiter-Uranus brings in faith, in morality, in virtue, in belief, in hope, in inspiration, in imagination. And we could all use renewal and rejuvenation and like a reset that broadens and opens our hearts and minds. I mean, when could we not use that, right? So it's an exciting transit from that standpoint. Let's go back in time. Now, this one is going to take us way back. And I just want to point out, watch. I mean, it takes a really, really, really long time for Jupiter to catch Uranus while it's in the sign of Taurus again, going backward from this point. See, it doesn't catch it there. And you got to keep going back and back in time. And it was really interesting for me to, to perform this exercise as a way of looking very closely at just how rare these events are. And it reminds me that, we are living in one of the things I heard one time that really changed my view of astrology was that, did you know that not all of the planets will never be in exactly the same position twice until the sun burns out? The sun will burn out before all of the planets in the solar system, through zodiacal measurement anyway, will be in exactly the same place again. So they don't repeat. Everything we look at, we're using a language of patterns, which is absolutely amazing. But what's even more amazing is that a language of patterns can still only grasp something that is so utterly unique. And that's a really important thing to remember, because astrology can put you into this mindset that everything is, there's sort of, almost like there's nothing new under the sun and everything is just repeating. Actually, in the life of our solar system, nothing really ever repeats in exactly the same way. And I don't know, I find that really inspiring. So anyway, look at how we're in the 1300s right now. Look at how far back we have to go, right? I think this is, just I was like, my God, how far back will I have to go? But we're almost there now. And I'm doing this exercise just to kind of, I feel like it does something in the mind and body to like watch this happen. So I thought we would do it, even though it's tedious. But just look at how much time in history passes before we get Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus again. So now we're coming close, and here they are in 1181. Jupiter and Uranus get together in the summer of 1181. There were two things that happened in 1181 that I thought were interesting, although it is much harder to find exact historical data. But this was a year that had Jupiter and Uranus together for a good portion of the year as Jupiter goes through Taurus, so they're co-present. You can see, for example, if I trace this out, that the two are co-present here and come back together in December of 1181. So they are there from June through December as kind of a co-present phenomenon. So most of 1181, they're together. Here are two interesting things that happened that year. One, St. Francis was baptized and named Francis. That was like his given name as initiation, I guess. And then a massive supernova was documented that was in the sky from June till December. That's interesting. Coincides perfectly with the Jupiter-Uranus alignment. And so these two events are interesting. I think, for one thing, why is St. Francis? I mean, regardless of if you're into Christianity or you really don't like it or whatever, one of the things that defined St. Francis was, well, two things really, was that he was someone who, in a way, influenced the trajectory of the Catholic Church by means of his compassion for animals and his belief that God spoke through nature, which is a very Jupiter, Uranus, and Taurus kind of thing. You have a famous nature saint kind of taking his monastic vows with Jupiter, Uranus conjoined in Taurus. And someone who was said to have literally talked to and even like preached to, like shared the good news with animals. And I worked for the Franciscans in New York City at a residence home as a social worker when I was just out of graduate school. And I wanted I moved to New York City and left behind the trajectory I thought I was going to be on as an English teacher, and did social work and was, writing my book and taking a very different path. I started to get interested in astrology. The Franciscans that I worked for were very interesting, eclectic, different kind of Catholic that I had ever encountered. And I grew up Protestant, so it was different. But one of the things I remember the fathers telling me, or that was what I call Father John. There were two fathers, both Father John, that I worked for. Anyway, one of the things that they told me that I thought was interesting was that, he was known for ministering to the poor, to people who were sick, and to animals. And he was considered, very Christ-like in that respect, but especially because of his love for God's natural world and the belief that God spoke through the natural world. As a diviner who pays attention to signs and omens in nature, including the stars, I really appreciate that. And I think it's interesting that we have something of a revolutionary figure in the Catholic faith taking his vows at this time. And then, of course, a massive supernova is documented. And I believe I read somewhere that it was one of only like 9 that have ever been documented in recorded history. A supernova is also something that at that time, I can imagine, would have tremendously broadened our minds and our imaginations while looking at the heavens, which is characteristically Jupiter-Uranus. So anyway, I wanted to share those examples because they make for really good demonstrations of the archetypal combination of Jupiter and Uranus, but re-summarized. Breakthroughs in understanding, advancements in technology, progress, cultural expansion. These are the best things about Jupiter and Uranus. Social and political progress. It's not like everything gets better instantly. I don't want to give any kind of utopian false hope or something, but there can be interesting progress made, whether that's decoding the Enigma machine, just looking at the universe differently because of a supernova, or we can have moments of almost like a prophetic moment about the future of the country with respect to a very backward and morally despisable institution like the institution of slavery. So, there's reason to be very hopeful about the transit, which is why most astrologers are saying, look at that one next year. That's the big one. Breakthroughs in faith and wisdom. Quite literally, our moral and spiritual compass can expand. We can be struck with original mind and heart expanding insights that really serve to take us in a better direction. So anyway, don't forget, April 20th of 2024, we have the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in Taurus. Now, it gets a lot more interesting when you look at Jupiter. There's so many other examples of Jupiter-Uranus coming together in conjunctions outside of that sign, but hopefully this kind of serves the purpose for today and gives you some good things to think about. Like I said, we're going to do more parts in this series as a way of unpacking and getting excited for the transit. And we're going to look at it more on an archetypal level and what kinds of, I have a bunch of examples that I've seen in the lives of my clients when Uranus conjoins natal Jupiter or transiting Jupiter goes over natal Uranus, which is also very interesting. Don't forget, we are still trying to raise 1,777 backers donating to support this channel in the year ahead. If you like this content, my whole heart and soul goes into it because I believe in it. I believe that it is valuable spiritually, intellectually. I believe that it stimulates the imagination. It puts us back in a magical universe. And the truth is that I'll be here next year, no matter how the Kickstarter turns out, because I love it. And because this is, this is like my dharma. But it helps tremendously to support the whole staff, to support our creative direction and visions, like building the donation-based clinic so that we can offer affordable reading services, keeping our programs really accessible for people. And obviously, this is part of how I earn my living. It always is a reminder every year for me that any success I have is due to a kind of reciprocal relationship that I have with people who value what I do. And I like that. I like living in the tension of that space for 40 days a year because, there's something about it that just keeps it real for me. And I so appreciate everyone who's donated already. If you haven't yet and you are able to, please hop on over to the Kickstarter. You can find the link in the description of this video, or you can find it also in the comment section pinned to the top. Go over there, pick out a reward. All of our classes are 50% off. If you bundle them together, the savings go up even more. You can use them whenever you want. That you can renew them in 24 and 25. You can gift one and save a couple for yourself. So take advantage of that while it lasts. Help us get to our goal. And thank you guys so much, again, everyone who's already donated. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.